Joyride, 1957, a novel of intrigue by J.P. Wasmiller. Chapter 170. Once finished with lunch, James drove the Dodge back into downtown San Diego and parked at the waterfront of the harbor. He stared across the harbor. There were a few sailboats and a fishing trawler on the water, along with a dinner cruise boat. He then saw the Coronado ferry boat crossing the harbor over to Coronado Island. It was the only way to the island, and he suddenly got an idea. He jumped back in his Dodge and drove over to the ferry landing. It was about a half-hour wait, and he decided he would go over to the ferry and then see if he could visit the huge carrier, the Ranger. He'd never been on a carrier and always wanted to board one. Finally, the ferry arrived, and he drove the triple black 1957 Dodge onto the ferry along with a lot of other cars. He then waited on the deck as the ferry crossed the harbor. As he neared the island, he began to realize just how big the carrier number 61, the USS Ranger, was. He soon was able to drive his car off the ferry and drove over to the main gate of the Coronado Naval Base. He drove to the entrance and asked if he could visit a friend. The officer at the gate reviewed his credentials and then waved James past. James parked the Dodge near the pier where the USS Ranger was docked. He walked up to the gangplank and talked to the officer there. James told him that he would like to visit the carrier and then told him briefly of his D-Day experience. The officer was pleased just to meet a D-Day survivor and escorted James up the gangplank to the Ranger's deck. As they walked up, James noticed a slight rain was beginning to fall, and the sea breeze had also picked up a bit. The officer said he could explore the ship as long as he liked and put a visitor tag around James' neck. Just be off the ship by 1900, 7 p.m. in civilian time, as we're taking the Ranger out on a night training run. How long will you be gone? James asked. Oh, usually just 24 hours, but the skipper has the freedom to go longer depending on how the crew performs, the officer said, saluting. James returned the salute and then set about exploring the massive ship, really a city on the sea. He first went up on the top or flight deck. It was nearly 1,000 feet long, and a number of aircraft were positioned on that deck. Then he went down to the hangar deck, where there were a lot of aircraft. Soon the captain came by and took him up to the bridge, the deck from where the ship was being controlled. The captain told him that if he wanted, he could take a ride in one of the F-100 Super Sabre two-seat trainers the next morning, weather permitting. James said he'd really like that. The captain told him to be on the deck about 0900 the next morning. James then went down and checked out the radar room, the barracks, the mess hall, the anchor room, and a lot of other areas. He sat down in one of the recliners that were for the airplane pilots to rest in when not flying. It was red leather and very comfy. He stared up at the maps and photos on the walls. No aircraft carriers took part in the 1 million man D-Day force, as the British bases were only 25 miles away from their target and provided full air support. Soon James' eyes became heavy and he went straightway back to D-Day. His dream was bloody and gory, as his flashbacks always were.